Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How B2B Marketers Can Prepare for the Coming Cookieless World. My name is Nipul Choksi. I'm VP of Marketing here at Dun & Bradstreet, and I'm going to be your host today. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. We do have time at the end for audience Q&A, so looking forward to that. You can ask questions anytime by typing into the Q&A box at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We always love audience questions and look forward to hearing from you. Finally, the question that always gets asked at every webinar, will this webinar be available after it's done in a recording? It will be, and rest assured, we'll get that to you afterwards as well. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get started with the show. I'm really excited to be here today to be joined by Travis Klinger of LiveRamp, one of our key partners at D&B. Travis is a Senior Vice President of the LiveRamp ecosystem, and he's responsible for crafting the LiveRamp's ad tech and international identity strategy. Travis co-founded and is on the board of the Advertising ID Consortium, whose goal is to enable a standard cookie pool and people-based identifiers on the internet. Needless to say, Travis is the leading authority on the topic that we're talking about today. Now, before I turn it over to Travis, a little bit of context. As we've all heard, third-party cookies are really going away for all intents and purposes. And that's going to really change the rules of digital marketing. Apple and their Safari browser, Firefox as well, have both blocked third-party cookies by default for some time. Google and its Chrome browser is scheduled to start blocking third-party cookies at the end of 2021 or early next year. And that's going to impact a lot of things that we do from a digital marketing standpoint, whether it's targeting and cross-site retargeting, whether it's optimizing our bids, whether it's setting the proper frequency and caps for our ads, whether it's driving attribution and reporting. There are a lot of things that are going to change in the digital marketing game as a result. Now, our point of view here is that this change is really an opportunity to gain an edge over your competitors, to build trust and to engage with more relevance. Having said that, the new era also requires marketers and businesses to put customers at the center, both by building a robust data strategy and having the right technology in place. And so with that, what I wanted to do is turn it over to Travis, who'll talk about some of the work that he's doing with the consortium and also his take on some of the best practices with regards to how marketers can address the coming cookieless world. Travis?
Thank you, Nipul, and a pleasure to be here this morning. So I want to talk a little bit about where digital advertising is going and the opportunity that we have as an ecosystem to build a much better advertising experience, an advertising experience that's better for consumers, better for publishers, and better for marketers as well. So as we look at the changes happening, the third-party cookie going away, the changes with the IDFA that will reduce the number of IDFAs, the upcoming changes to IP address that we expect, the idea of unconsented device identifiers is really becoming a notion of the past. And we're going to move to a world where a new type of identity has to emerge, a new type of identity has to connect the ecosystem together and enable marketers to connect with their consumers through publishers. And at LiveRamp, we've been working on this for the past 4 years. So I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the roadblocks and requirements to maintaining identity. Then we'll talk about some of the options that the ecosystem see, and then dive into what we've built and the results that we've got. So if we jump to the next slide, we'll see some of the roadblocks and requirements that we have for building a comprehensive identity. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that identity is interoperable. Today, identity is fragmented. We have hundreds of third-party cookies, and you have to map between them. And each time you jump from one third-party cookie space to the other, you lose data. In the future world, and the world that we're building today, you should be able to seamlessly move data across different identifiers. These identifiers should also be persistent, enabling a consistent and comprehensive view of the customer. The cookie has failed with this. The cookie is not a persistent identifier. It's hard to store consumer preferences with the cookie, and it's hard for the marketer to really measure the results of their campaign and understand the consumer journey. So we should build people-based identity that is interoperable and enables consumers to easily store their consent preferences. And this gets to the last 2 points. So we need to make sure that this is secure. As we build the new ecosystem, we want to ensure that the identity that we're using can never be re-identified to the consumer. We want to continue to offer consumers that anonymity that they've come to expect with the third-party cookie. And then we want to ensure that we're putting consumer privacy at the forefront of everything that we do. We need to upgrade the ecosystem from a consumer privacy perspective. We've failed the consumer and lost the trust of the consumer by not explaining the value exchange of the open internet. So as we look at what's going to be the future of the open internet, we want to make sure first and foremost we have a transparent value exchange to the consumer and the ability for the consumers to easily control their data. So jumping to the next slide, we've seen a couple of items that have come out as potential solutions. So first, we're seeing proposals to just use hashed emails, to leverage consumer logins and then just hash the email, pass those in the bitstream in place of the cookies. While the idea of leveraging consumer logins is a great one and one we'll talk more about, we have to have security. Just passing hashed emails is not going to work. First, a hashed email is not a person. Each email address can have up to 3 different hashes, and most people have more than one email address, in addition to having name and postal records and phone numbers. Second, it's not secure. Hashing can be broken, and the idea of hashing hashed emails in the bitstream would allow for web behavioral data to potentially be re-identified with the consumer, which is something we don't want to do. We also are seeing fingerprinting. So fingerprinting is where you collect signals from the browser in order to create a unique identifier. So you can imagine every time you visit a web page, your browser sends data to that web page to optimize your viewing experience. So for me, it's going to say that I am in the Pacific time zone, that I'm running a MacBook Pro 13-inch, that my screen size is this, that I happen to have this brightness setting, this font setting, that I want the page to respond in English. All of these are unique signals with your operating system and more. And you can start to build a profile of the consumer. But this is not acceptable in the new industry. It's not privacy friendly. The reason the third-party cookie is going away is because we didn't explain the value exchange. And as we build a new solution, we've got to ensure that that new solution explains the value exchange and is transparent to the consumer. Fingerprinting, while having the allure of scale, is not sustainable from a privacy perspective. So if we jump to our next slide, what we need is a new identity solution that has 3 main attributes. First, it is people-based. We need to enable marketers to reach their audiences at the person level. This is why we're seeing such success in the large social platforms of today. The ability to have a connection with the consumer across the different touch points, whether I log in with one email address on one publisher and another on a subsequent publisher, is still the same person. The same if I use my phone number on a mobile app. We need an identity that encompasses all of those touch points and enables marketers to connect to consumers regardless of their type of identity they use. Second, we need something that's neutral and scalable. We need the ability for marketers to buy an identity that's not connected to the media transaction. At LiveRamp, we don't play a role in the process of buying media. We don't take a take rate on the buy or sell side. We represent merely the ability for marketers to connect their data to publisher inventory. And third, it's important that the solution is global. The identity that marketers want to use needs to work everywhere in the world. Marketers are not looking for just a US identity solution. They're looking for a global identity solution. At LiveRamp, we are committed to rolling out addressability to new markets. Today, our authenticated traffic solution, which we'll talk more about in a moment, is live in the US. It's live across the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Japan, and Australia. And over the coming months, we'll be rolling it out into Argentina, Brazil, Romania, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Taiwan. So as marketers evaluate the identity solution, they should be asking, does it work in all of the markets that I need? And if not, they should work with the identity provider to make sure it does. So jumping to the next slide. More importantly, what we need with the new ecosystem is that it's built on a framework of trust. We don't want to build an entirely new ecosystem that then is broken in a few years because it has the same problem the third-party cookie has. The third-party cookie failed to explain the value exchange. The value exchange that happens when individuals visit a publisher site and access free content, the value exchange that individuals have when they engage with a marketer, perhaps signing up for that marketer's newsletter or becoming a customer of that marketer. Our role as an ad tech middleware is to connect individuals across marketer and publisher relationships, but to ensure that transparency and consent is first undermined, in the design of this solution. So we want to make sure that it's clear to individuals how their data is being used, that they have an easy opt-out, and that they are opting in the sense of sharing their email address with each publisher and marketer. We're building a new ecosystem that's rooted in trust, an ecosystem that's going to be sustainable, that enables marketing to continue to exist long past the third-party cookie. If we jump to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how ATS works. So ATS, or Authenticated Traffic Solution, enables publishers to connect their first-party identity across channels. So you can imagine you may log in to a publisher on the display website. You might also log in on your connected television device, your mobile and app. ATS works the same across all of these channels. Maps that logged in identifier to LiveRamp's robust offline identity and anonymizes it and passes it back to the publisher. We don't co-opt or store any publisher data. A consumer's login only works on the publisher that they have logged in on. And then we've built out a system of new piping across the ad tech platforms, the supply side platforms and the demand side platforms, to enable that identity, that people-based identifier, to be used for open exchange and private marketplace deals. So now marketers can measure, they can target, they can suppress, they can measure, all based on people-based identity. And importantly, every impression bought with Identity Link is measurable on Identity Link. So today, when you buy inventory in Safari and Firefox that's not using Identity Link, that inventory is unmeasurable. Third-party cookies don't work there. So you're losing the opportunity to understand, did those impressions actually drive the consumer journey? Now, when you buy on Identity Link, though, every impression becomes measurable. And this enables marketers to have some new benefits in the new ecosystem. So if we jump to the next slide, we expect to give marketers additional reach, additional precision, the continued ability to target people one-to-one at scale. So just as you're able to do audience-based buys today, you'll be able to do audience-based buys in the future, but also increasing addressability, not only on Chrome, but adding to Safari and Firefox. Most importantly, we're putting the consumer first. Every login that happens through ATS has a clear and transparent value exchange. The consumer is sharing their email in a trusted relationship with that publisher. Every impression that marketer buys becomes measurable, whether that impression is on mobile and app, connected TV, or cookieless display. The marketer is now able to measure and connect all of those together. And by leveraging people-based identity for frequency capping and suppression, marketers can make sure that the people are seeing just the right amount of ads in their audience and enabling more effective investments. We're seeing impressive returns on this already. As I said, we've been working on this ecosystem for the past 4 years, and we now have 1 in 5 people logging in every week through our ATS publishers. And so if we jump to the next slide, we'll see some of the results that a B2B marketer achieved on a recent test campaign. So they ran a campaign taking their niche audience with the goal of maximizing scale and ROAS, divided it 50-50. Half of the audience ran on a third-party cookie, and half of the audience ran on LiveRamp's people-based identity link. We saw a 3 times increase in ROAS, or return on ad spend, a 54% decrease in the cost per acquisition, and a 12% decrease in the CPM. So the marketer was able to see better results, better reach, and better ROAS, all by buying on people-based identity. So this new ecosystem is here today, and marketers are able to take advantage of it today. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Nipul.
Awesome. Thanks, Travis. And great technology and a great example indeed. And to my point earlier, we think that this will force us to think in different ways just to be able to drive value for our customers, to be able to engage them in more relevant ways. And you saw some of the metrics come out of your case study there that I think are great proof points around that. A couple of other points before we jump into the Q&A, just to kind of give the audience a little bit more color in terms of how they can prepare for this transition, or how they should be preparing in terms of this transition. So first, just looking at some of our more advanced customers, looking at addressing this challenge. What a lot of our customers are doing is really, they're starting to look at their media plans and trying out different approaches, right? So some are increasing their focus and investment on kind of the walled gardens, if you will, the LinkedIns of the world, where you can run an ad directly, using the LinkedIn campaign manager, targeting non-PII based. But targeting based on non-PII based data, things like company and title. At the same time, they're also figuring out where they're syndicating their content so that they can reach audiences in a more relevant, in a more targeted way, right? So if you're a marketer and if you're selling to marketers, you're most likely going to increase your investment from a syndication standpoint in terms of adage.com, for example, because that tends to cater to the audience that you're targeting. So the idea here is to really think about different ways in which you can meaningfully engage with your buyers across different channels in a very relevant way. And then the second piece of this is companies really need to think about how they're building and activating their first-party data strategies, right? Looking at and creating custom customer experiences based on things like de-anonymized website visit data, right? Where you can learn at least the company that, that the visitors are from, and you can tailor your messages and your offers appropriately on your website based on that. We have customers, for example, who are leveraging CRM and transactional data, and then applying AI models on top of that to be able to identify the next best offer. So when in the case of identifying and providing offers for upsell to existing customers in a more optimized way. So there are a lot of great uses for first-party data that it just becomes really critical for you as brands for us as brand managers to really kind of be able to leverage in order to drive more custom and relevant experiences. And so with that, we've got a few questions coming in here. The first question for you, Travis, the ATS, the advanced, the ATS system that you were talking about, how should a customer think about getting started with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the Authenticated traffic solution, the beauty is that it surfaces inventory on Identity Link, our people-based identifier. We're also continuing to surface inventory on Identity Link with our third-party cookie graph. So today, there's 22 billion impressions available every day to buy on Identity Link across SSPs such as Index Exchange, PubMatic, Magnite, and OpenX. And you can also buy on Identity Link on platforms such as The Trade Desk, MediaMath, Amobi, DataZoo, and Beeswax. So if a customer wants to start testing out this solution and leveraging it, we encourage them to take a campaign and go ahead and switch it to running on identity links. So they can reach out to their D&B representative or their LiveRamp representative. We'd be happy to work with them and the platform of their choice to get a campaign going on identity link. Just last quarter, we had 100+ campaigns run on identity link and see impressive results on buying on people-based identity versus key-based identity.
Awesome, awesome. The next question here, very much around account-based marketing. What does this mean for companies that are doing ABM? Travis, did you have any thoughts or input there? Otherwise, I can certainly take that as well, as we talk to a lot of ABM customers as well.
Yeah, if you want to take it, and then I'm happy to chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of account-based marketing, obviously ABM relies very heavily on, kind of leveraging customer data, whether it's first party or third party, in order to be able to drive more personalized and customized experiences with those buyers. And so what we found is what this is going to do, again, is shift very much the focus on being able to leverage as much of your first party data assets as possible in terms of engaging with buyers, just in this kind of the short to medium term, right? So being able to leverage, your anonymous website visit data and making sure that your ABM platform provider is able to actually de-anonymize that with some measure of fidelity to be able to at least provide you with, kind of company information, maybe even title information of the person visiting, right? So that you can engage with buyers in a more relevant way using that data. The other piece that is going to continue to emphasize is really using an omni-channel approach. So using a combination of not just your digital channels. So instead of just, targeting ads, and kind of targeting them using company and title information to your target accounts, also making sure that you've got outreach scheduled at the same time from your SDRs and making sure they're enabled with the right offers there. Making sure that your marketing team is executing on the relevant campaigns, outbound campaigns against those. So we think that, it's not just kind of the first party data and being able to use that to drive better targeting. That's essential for ABM, but it's also taking more of this multi-channel approach, if you will. Okay. Awesome. And so it looks like we're up on time here. There are a few other questions here, and we will get back to and reach out to those folks individually. In the meantime, Travis, thank you very much for being here and walking us through your point of view and thoughts around the cookieless world. And thank you everyone else for attending. See you soon. Thanks.
Thank you all so much.